The Council of Nicaea erased our true history. Here's why few events in ancient history have had as profound and lasting an impact on the world as the First Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Officially convened by Emperor Constantine I, this gathering of Christian bishops from across the Roman Empire was meant to resolve theological disputes and unify the growing Christian faith. But beneath the surface of doctrine and dogma lies a deeper, more controversial question. Did the Council of Nicaea erase or manipulate our true spiritual and historical narrative? This article explores the origins, decisions, and long-term consequences of the First Council of Nicaea, not just from a theological standpoint, but from a broader cultural and historical perspective. We'll examine how the Council shaped Christianity, influenced historical records, and why some believe it marked the beginning of a systematic rewriting of human spiritual heritage. A political decision with spiritual consequences. To understand the significance of the Council of Nicaea, we must first consider its context. In the early 4th century, Christianity was still a relatively new and fragmented religion. There were many competing interpretations of Jesus' nature, the Trinity, and what constituted sacred scripture. One of the most contentious debates centered around Arianism, a doctrine proposed by Arius, a priest from Alexandria, who argued that Jesus Christ was not co-eternal with God the Father, but rather a created being. Divine, yes, but subordinate to God. This debate threatened to divide the Christian community and even destabilize the empire itself. To bring unity and order, Emperor Constantine I, the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity, or at least adopt it politically, called for the First Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. More than 300 bishops attended, representing nearly every region of the known Christian world. The result was the Nicene Creed, a statement of belief affirming that Jesus Christ is begotten, not made, being of one substance with the Father. This decision formally condemned Arianism and established a unified doctrine for the Christian Church. But beyond theology, the Council also set a precedent. The state could shape religious truth. Who decided what was true? One of the most controversial aspects of the Council of Nicaea is the process by which certain texts were included in the Bible while others were excluded. Although the final canon of the New Testament wasn't officially solidified until later councils, such as the Synod of Hippo, 393 AD, and the Council of Carthage, 397 AD, the groundwork was laid at Nicaea. Many ancient texts, now referred to as apocryphal or Gnostic Gospels, were left out of the official Christian canon. These include the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Judas, the Apocryphon of John. These texts often presented alternative views of Jesus, his teachings, and the nature of divinity. Some portrayed Mary Magdalene as a prominent disciple. Others suggested that Judas acted on Jesus' instructions, and still others described a more mystical, internal understanding of salvation. Critics argue that these texts were excluded not because they were false, but because they challenged the authority of the institutional church and the emerging power structures within it. By selecting specific writings and rejecting others, the bishops at Nicaea and subsequent councils effectively curated the version of history and spirituality that would dominate Western civilization for centuries. Was this historical censorship? Some modern scholars and researchers go so far as to call this process a form of historical censorship, a deliberate effort to suppress alternative narratives about Jesus and early Christianity. If we accept that multiple versions of Christian belief existed during the first few centuries after Jesus' death, then the decisions made at Nicaea can be seen as a political and ideological consolidation of power. Books like The Da Vinci Code, by Dan Brown popularized the idea that the Church actively suppressed alternative views of Jesus, including those that emphasized feminine divine figures or non-hierarchical leadership. While fiction, the book drew on real historical debates and controversies. In reality, the Church Fathers who participated in these councils believed they were protecting the faithful from heresy and confusion. From their perspective, establishing a clear, orthodox teaching was essential for maintaining unity and coherence in a rapidly expanding faith. But from a modern secular perspective, the exclusion of these texts raises important questions. Who gets to decide what is true? What voices were silenced in the process? And perhaps most importantly, what parts of our spiritual and historical past were erased or distorted? The role of Constantine, faith or politics? Another point of controversy is the role played by Emperor Constantine himself. Though he is often credited with legalizing Christianity through the Edict of Milan in 313 AD, Constantine was baptized only on his deathbed and never fully committed to Christian rites during his reign. His involvement in the Council of Nicaea has led many historians to speculate whether his primary motivation was spiritual enlightenment or political control. After all, a unified religion could help unify a vast and diverse empire. By aligning himself with the Christian Church, Constantine ensured that Christianity would become the dominant religious force in Europe. But in doing so, he may have also transformed a grassroots movement into a centralized institution, one that would eventually wield immense political power. This transformation had lasting consequences. As Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire, other belief systems were increasingly marginalized. Pagan temples were destroyed, ancient rituals outlawed, and alternative philosophies branded as heretical. What happened to alternative histories? With the rise of institutional Christianity came the decline of many older traditions. The mystery religions of the Greco-Roman world, such as Mithraism, Orphism, and the Eleusinian mysteries, faded into obscurity. Gnosticism, with its emphasis on inner knowledge and personal spiritual experience, was declared heretical. Even earlier forms of Christianity, such as those found in Egypt, Syria, and Mesopotamia, were gradually absorbed or eliminated. Many of these groups held beliefs that diverged significantly from Nicene orthodoxy, including different views on the nature of Christ, the soul, and the cosmos. As these traditions disappeared, so too did much of the cultural and intellectual diversity that once flourished in the ancient world. The result was a monotheistic worldview that dominated Europe for over a millennium. A worldview shaped not necessarily by truth, but by power, politics, and consensus. Modern rediscoveries and their implications. In recent decades, discoveries like the Nag Hammadi Library, found in Egypt in 1945, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered between 1946 and 1956, have provided scholars with unprecedented access to ancient texts previously thought lost or destroyed. These findings have challenged traditional narratives and offered new insights into the diversity of early Christian and Jewish thought. They've also sparked renewed interest in alternative histories and the possibility that the story we know may be only part of a much larger puzzle. For example, the Gospel of Thomas, a collection of sayings attributed to Jesus, suggests a more mystical and esoteric approach to spirituality. Unlike the Synoptic Gospels, it contains no accounts of miracles or resurrection, instead focusing on self-knowledge and enlightenment. Similarly, the Gospel of Judas portrays Judas Iscariot not as a traitor, but as someone who carried out Jesus' wishes by delivering him to the authorities. Such perspectives challenge the traditional view of betrayal and redemption that became central to mainstream Christian theology. These rediscoveries raise important questions. How much of our current understanding of history is based on selective preservation? Could there have been entire schools of thought, philosophies, and spiritual paths that were deliberately erased? And if so, what might our world look like today if those alternatives had survived? Conclusion. Rewriting the past, reclaiming lost knowledge. The Council of Nicaea stands as a pivotal moment in human history, not just for Christianity, but for the way it shaped our collective memory of the past. It was here that decisions were made that would influence theology, literature, art, and even politics for centuries to come. But as we continue to uncover lost texts and reinterpret ancient wisdom, we are forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our history may not be as complete or accurate as we once believed. The Council of Nicaea did not merely define Christian doctrine. It helped construct the lens through which we see the ancient world. Whether this was an act of divine guidance, political strategy, or historical manipulation depends largely on your perspective. What remains undeniable is this: there are gaps in our knowledge, and those gaps were not always accidental. If we are to truly understand our past, and by extension ourselves, we must remain open to questioning the narratives we've inherited and exploring the mysteries that lie just beyond the edge of accepted history.